that guy to get mad when people do it and then I do it. Amen. You want to come sit with me? We dialogue and talk? Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna pull Kenny up, but Kenny, they had something that they're trying to figure out. Um, so he had to step out today. Um, can I be honest? I love coming into certain spaces, especially where I kind of have the flexibility to, and it kind of change the paradigm. I like to flip it up. I like to keep people guessing, and because he like I don't know what he about to do. But I just want to have an intimate conversation. I'm not gonna take a text. I'm not gonna even bring up my iPad. And I want to talk about from our history, where we come from. Get a little bit raw, because the subject that he gave me. Can you turn it down a little bit in the monitors? It's ringing a little bit, and I'm gonna read exactly. Check one.
Is it my mic testing?
Oh, it might be this mic. Check one. So the name of this session is The Sound of Deliverance. And I'm going to kind of steer away from the last two words and just focus on the two words for this particular session, the sound. In 2016, I put out a project called The Heart of the Minstrel. And the reason why I did the project, and I love telling this story because people that are in ministry for monetary purposes get mad when I start talking about the genesis of my ministry. And the reason why I recorded an album, at this particular point, it's in a lot of places. The reason why I did it, the motive with the vehicle behind it was I got tired of going places preaching for people. And y'all guys had amazing, first of all, y'all was amazing, especially today. Like it felt like you guys, like y'all were a team, like from the musicians to the praise team to you today, Jeffrey yesterday. There was a cohesiveness and there was a synergy that flowed that could only be God. And I got tired of going to places, man, and the musicians suck. And you ever go try to preach and you try to tap into, oh, can I say that? Can I talk? All right, my wife is in the car, so if I say nigga, don't tell her I said it. Amen. Sometimes sometimes you just gotta say it, especially when you minister. Look, I gotta be me today. Nigament in the church, and you go places, and the musicians either high or drunk, and you trying to flow, and they trying to end what you saying so they can go back to the club. You ever been there, done that? Or they're just not there. They're not for whatever reason. And so my apostle at the time, he was just like, well, why don't you just record some music, and then whenever you need to flow, you can have stuff to flow. And so when I did that, it's not a project. When I sat down literally and I produced, mixed, mastered. My degree is in music production and engineering, and we're gonna talk about sound, but legitimately that one project, I literally did it and finished it within an hour. I literally recorded it. I mixed it in Pro Tools. I mastered it because that's what my degree field is. I do it professionally. And I literally just had it to go. And I would go places and like the ones that people like a lot is the sound of intercession. And I would put that song on. People were like, can I have that? I was like, well, it's not for sale, but I can make you y'all remember when you burned a CD? How long, when was your first project? When was you?
2018.
2018? When was your first project? 2017. So even around that time, I remember like sitting on the computer, like putting all the stuff on an iTunes playlist and then burning the CD. I was lazy, so I didn't do what y'all did. Apostle Jason is a graphic designer. Design a cover art and print them out from Staples. You get a kit from Staples. I was too lazy, so I would literally put it on a burned CD and write it down. And then something told me, and he was like, why don't you just put it on YouTube and it'll be easier for people to have access to it. And I put the music on iTunes and literally just the rest is history. And what I realized, and I'm an advocate for, and I have a lot of friends that are, professionally doing really good in the music industry. But it's crazy how many artists are stronger prophetic worship leaders than they are pop artists. And I feel like, and I'm not a unicorn, and a unicorn means like you just the first. Like there are many people that can do it, but there's a lot of people that are not doing it. And I'm an advocate for when God has given you a sound, even though if it's not the cultural norm or the culture is looking for it, I'm a testimony that God will bend the culture to put your sound in demand. Now, keep in mind, now legitimately, and I'm going to give you some numbers. I'm an advocate for entrepreneurship, even in the worship space, that legitimately I can pay my mortgage what I get in royalties every month from something that I released in 2016. Not talking about nothing else that I do. And what the Lord began to demonstrate was, when you understand the power of your sound, I will cause provision to flock to it. Now, keep in mind, my dream job, I owned a studio for about 2.5 years. I worked with hip hop artists, they came in smoking weed, high, drunk. I worked with R&B artists that brought their mistresses and so forth and so forth. I worked with so many different genres of music. And I began to pray one day, I'm like, Lord, why is my gift not being satisfied in these particular spaces? And one thing that the Lord began to say to me was, I sent you in this field not to make money, but to develop your sound. I want some of you to recognize that sometimes for if you went to school for something, or you've been in training for something, that maybe the training was not for the necessary you to do it just to do a 9 to 5, but maybe that God sent you into a space. In the school that I went to was like $60,000, $70,000 a semester. Let that sink in. For me to graduate, and currently, I don't do nothing with my degree. Anybody have that testimony? That you did all this training, the school I went to was Berklee College of Music. I went all this training, my rent was $2,300 the third year. The first year was $2,800 a month. And I'm like, Lord, why would you tell me to go here? I know I heard from the Lord. Why would you tell me to go here? I graduate. And after 2 years in the studio, I don't want to do this no more. And the Lord began to tell me, like, it's not for you to make a career. It's for you to make a sound. For you to cultivate a sound. And so 2016 is when I released the music. But who would have knew a pandemic would come? And what the world were to say, this is just instrumental music, is now in demand. Because preachers ain't coming to a building, they're going to YouTube. And they're looking for a sound. And so I hope we reverence this moment that we have, and I'm not going to be long. And I want us to really dialogue and share, and it's going to make sense in a second. That what you are sitting on, you have a limited time to get some things in order, because there's going to come a time where they're going to need your sound. Now let's float some things. They don't need, and I mean this with all respect, and I'm going to start with me first. They don't need my sound coming from you. We got one Psalmist Rain. We got one Apostle Denard Street. We got one Dr. Kenny Knoll. And anything that's not you is illegal. Some of us have to reconcile that in our mind. You know, I love Prophetess Deborah, but when you get up to sing, I don't want to hear her because we got her. I need to hear you, and so forth and so forth. And I think one of the things that the enemy tries to fight us, and we all go through it, like legitimately, you know, I've been playing since I was 6 years old. I'm classically trained. I'm trained in jazz. I'm trained in Latin culture, Afrocentric culture, musically. And it's funny because, you know, I get into some church settings and people that have no training can legitimately do things that I would have to think twice to do. You know, I'm not saying I can't do it, but I'm saying is, you know, I'm going to have to go home and shed a little bit. Y'all know what that means, to shed, go home and shed? It means to go home and practice, go home and to rehearse, to listen until that thing becomes natural. And it took a long time. It took me about 14 years. I remember I have a good friend, Jerry, and we were in, he went to my high school, and we were at a lunch table my freshman year in high school, and he comes from the jazz R&B side, never played in church, still can't play in church, and he said to me at the lunch table, he says, oh, you play gospel? Oh, anybody can do that. And I got offended. Now, this dude can play. Like, this boy can play. Like, he can play. At his age, he was the youngest, you know, most accomplished jazz musician at his time. And, you know, I was looking at what he was able to do. And I'm not calling it inferiority, but I'm like, Lord, I wish I can do that. And it took a long time for me to reconcile, well, why do you need to do it? Why do you need to be able to play in a way that is not necessarily particular to what I have called for you to do? Now, this session is not even just for musicians and worship leaders, and 'cause that's where my heart is, but it's also for intercessors and any vocal gift in the body of Christ. I want to ask you this today. Why are you limiting yourself to what others are doing that you don't necessarily have to do? Like we love you know, some of my favorites, Noel Jones, you know, I love listening to Bishop Jakes, you know, like they're just so, Tudor Bismarck, like there's some guys that they can go. They can work that, they can break that text down. And the Lord had to deal with me of, you know, it's good to honor them, but it's worse to be them. It's good to pay homage to the pioneers that have went before you, but don't dishonor you by being something that you are not created to do. I love the particular text, and that's going to be the basis of our conversation today, that he came from is you could have got Saul out of here. Saul was a murderer. Saul was wretched in his approach. He was wretched in his stance. But why? Did you not know that he killed parents? You killed men. You killed people that legitimately loved on you. But why, when you came to him, all you had to say, God, was, why are you persecuting me? And as you were ministering, the Lord began to deal with me about the value of your sound. That sometimes God will overlook your faults because your sound is so much more valuable than your trespasses. I hope that we really receive from his message today that God ain't holding what you're holding as an excuse to keep you from going forward. I even have a whole different outlook in bondage from what you taught, because how can you even claim to be bound when he died for you to be free? The Bible says whom the Son is set free is free indeed. And so any thought of being bound, honestly, is pretense. Like literally, and let me break it down. Like what I mean is, if you feel you're bound, is actually you're pretending to be bound. And so honestly, when you altar call, is not me necessarily trying to cast some things out of you, because I don't believe that as a believer you can be possessed. And what that means is that a demon is taking over you. No, you're coming to the altar, and what deliverance ministry actually is for us to teach you how to stop pretending. Stop pretending to be bound by fear. Fear is not something that binds you. It's a choice. Because he didn't give it to you. He gave you a spirit of might, a sound mind. And so I begin to look at it, and the reason why I want to have this conversation is because God was trying to sanctify his sound. Hear me though. The sound was not necessarily what God gave it to him because he was righteous. The sound was not given to him because he did everything right. It was something that was there before he was born. How do you know it was there? It's because Saul obviously had influence, that he was able to honestly do what he wants to do, fight who he wants to fight, and get away with it because it spoke to his influence, which means that influence or his sound was there before his conversion. Now, I don't know who's in the room. I don't need to know. I ain't trying to be a psychic. But your conversion is irrelevant to your sound. Your conversion is irrelevant to your sound. This is what I learned, and I used to. None of the musicians are here, so I don't need to really go into detail. But a lot of pastors are up in the air about what their musicians do outside of church time. Now I'm a whole pastor, I'm a whole apostle, and for many years, drinking is not that was never my thing. Drugs was never my thing. Sleeping around with a bunch of people, that was never my thing, and so I'm about to say some things, and don't ever put me in a category because that ain't my thing. Now, I might tell you off sometimes, and that's why I had to learn how to weep yesterday. That's why I had to learn how to weep because I got some, some of those type of issues, but some of the stuff that we only focus on in church, that ain't my thing. But honestly, professionally, I'm a professional musician, and my story was, I played in groups that, we would do jazz festivals on Saturday. We would do, I don't know if you guys know Atlantic City. Like we would do, stuff at Atlantic City. We would do, they weren't clubs, but they were bars. So we gonna call it a club just to make a point. And I would legitimately make money on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and come to church and minister. And is the sin me being in the atmosphere, or is the sin compromising to the atmosphere? I remember, one time, and they got mad at me. We had a revival at there was a if you ever go to Philly, well, it's not there no more. We had a place called Warm Daddies, and I remember sitting in the green room of Warm Daddies, and we was ministering the gospel to the point that we were late to our set because we were having revival at Warm Daddies. Warm Daddies is a whole restaurant/bar, but why can't God come into a restaurant? And it was funny to me. Now they was a little tipsy, so I may be wrong, but I used to love watching the people be moved by the music. That there was one James Brown song we did, "Funky Good Time," and for some reason, because we were all black, we will always go into a shout at some point. That's what black people do. Whether you in church or you not in church, you're gonna have that moment, and church will automatically come. And I remember just seeing the Holy Spirit begin to move on people. Hopefully they weren't tipsy, but the Holy Spirit began to move on people, even though it was not a church environment. And one thing I learned is this: your sound is not limited to a Sunday. Your sound is not limited to a Sunday. And what if I were to tell you that even in Saul's season of persecution, that the reason why he was successful at it is because the anointing was flowing through his gift. And so when God had to deal with Saul, it wasn't necessarily just a conversion of the heart. I needed to convert the gift. It's the right gift, wrong context. Right gift, wrong facilitation. And so I feel like when we focus on the sound of deliverance, and this is where I'm going to bring up Apostle Denard Street in, we focus on people trying to manipulate what God has given them to fit the church. But my question for all of us today, and I'm going to phrase it to you in a question, is, do you even know what your sound is? for the intercessors in the room what your authentic sound is. You know, they get a kick out of it when I start talking like this. Not them tongues that people gave you. Not them tongues that we be practicing. Can we be honest? You know, because like these conversations are why these settings are not as important. Is because we don't want to talk for real. That y'all know y'all be practicing how to shout. We be practicing how to speak in tongues because church culture tells us if we don't sound like them, then it's not anointed. It's not glory. And so I wanted to, you know, have this conversation. I wish Kenny was here. But, you know, first of all, you have an amazing sound. And hopefully I gave you the freedom because I feel that your sound is not even just limited to the church. And I don't know. I'm going to say this as an assumption. It's not a prophetic word. As an assumption, that you've had seasons where you've kind of felt the unction to even explore some other musical facilitations that kind of fought against, you know, what the church says. And so before we even get to this part of the conversation, like, how would you label your sound?
See not. Oh, okay. I'll actually label my sound as authentic. That I carry now because it comes from a real place of experience of what I've been through. It's not tainted. You know, I just give it to God. And one of the things that I do teach is that. Like you were saying, sometimes, and I just said this past Wednesday to my church, a lot of times we've been programmed to be like what we see. Mm-hmm. So that's how our sound, you know, gets tainted. We think we should sound like, you know, Psalmist Rain. We should sound like others and different things like that. And so my cry has always been in my prayer, Lord, let me be authentic. Mm-hmm. So that's been my sound. So when I seek him, you know, God, give me, you know, my sound for the region, for the nation, God, even in my release. And it's one thing that my producer said in the project I'm working on now. He said, man, you have a different sound. He said, it's something. He said, it's the anointing. It is something on this. He was like, man, I kind of see this going, you know, a little further than what you probably expect. And so I would just say for me, it's really authentic. You know, even with preaching, you know, I try to be real. I try to be authentic, coming from that place where God, I don't want to get up and then transform into somebody else. We already have a Juanita Bynum. We already have, you know, like you say, T.D. Jakes, all of these great men and women of God. We have them, and they've done what they've done. But it's time now for us to release our sound, the realness, the authenticity that God has placed on the inside of us, so we can draw who we're called to draw. And so I really believe that the sound that I carry is authentic. I don't got, and then too, just be real, I don't have time to be like nobody else. It's irritating, you know.
Do you go through the pressure? So one of the things, and I love it, and I didn't realize, I knew it, but I didn't realize it until you just said it. And first of all, he's a senior leader, so you know there's a sound of your house. Yes. There's a sound of your ministry, yes. And there's also the sound of what you do professionally, yes. In terms of music. Yes. And one of the things when I used to manage artists, and one thing I hate would be I would tell the artist that I really want to go in this direction, and they would argue with me that if we do this, radio wouldn't play it. Or the demographic that I'm looking for wouldn't like it. And so they would change their sound to fit the current sound. And so, like, do you ever go through that pressure?
No, I don't. I really don't. One thing I did ask is, talking is just, you're so on point with it, because when I was working, I went back to Chicago to record, and the producer, I was asking him about, you know, the radio, putting stuff out. What do you think? And even going with a label. Yeah. And he said, bro, let me explain to you. He said, man, what you carry, he said, it'll change you. Yeah. He said, do not get locked into that. He said, unless, God kind of give favor, but he said, you do what you do. But he said, what you have, you carry something that is authentic, that is different. Don't allow the industry or you getting into, you know what I mean, where they trying to change who you are to fit a certain look. And he said, no, man, what it's going to do is it's going to stifle you. It's going to cut you down. So he said, stick with what God has assigned you to do, the prophetic grace, the anointing. So honestly, I was just raised kind of, my mom and dad just kind of put that authority in us, believe, stand on for what you stand for, believe in it, be different. And so a lot of those areas I really don't struggle in, but, I'm straightforward. This is what it is. This is what God, this is what, hey, let's go. Yeah. Let's deal with that. And so I do minister that as well to our church, because a lot of times people coming in and they want to sound like me. Even the psalmists and the leaders. And I'm like, no, you have a sound. You can't beat me being me. That's not prideful. What I have is what I have. And so it's my assignment to minister to you so you can be developed in what God has assigned you to do. So
in the music industry, and he was talking about, labels. There's when especially nowadays, when you're getting signed, there's a thing called a 360 deal. And I would advise if you're a music artist, and I'm bringing this up and I'm gonna bring it into a church setting. So y'all ain't gonna expect it, but I'm gonna hit left field. But there's a thing called a 360 deal. And so when you sign to a label, they just don't own your licensing. They're getting money off of your merchandise. They're getting off of the songwriting credits. They're getting money off of what's being sold, which is called royalties. And what they say is, because we're investing in you, we have to recoup our money first. That's why TLC, at the highest point of their career, they declared bankruptcy, is because the record labels poured so much money in that the album sold millions and millions and millions, and they did not make a dime because they were still in a deficit. And even in the natural setting, we find this very similar in the church, and I think it's worse than the church, because some of us are under 360 deals in the church and don't even recognize it. Because they've given you a sound, they own everything in your life. And that's why, we cannot compromise. And I love what he said. And if your lead, if what he said does not echo or resonate in the culture of your ministry, you better pray about if you're supposed to be there. If your leader only validates you when you have their sound, you don't have a leader, you have a pimp.
That was good. That was good.
And so for those, for those that come into the house from other places that they've been dogged out, and a lot of times they bring old sounds into a holy environment. How do you, as a leader, process these people to encourage them to find their sound? Now, let me say this, because there's a rank in the spirit, and so. Just because you're not called to the nations the way that I am, because they're different influences. But just because your influence may not be as potent as my influence doesn't mean that you're worse. Doesn't mean that, and I hate being like, you're not on my level. Like, forget that kind of stuff. But how do you encourage, because you can sing. You can sing. And sometimes God will send a worship leader that may not be as anointed. Is that the right way to say it? Or I'll say this way: they may not be as talented,
or skilled.
Skilled as you.
Because folks get offended nowadays.
Yeah. How do you cultivate them to not conform or try to migrate into what you do, but put them on track for their own transformation and evolution to find who they authentically are?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I do before I really became a worship leader, I was singing at churches, and I would go to churches. They would have me to come in, and I started off getting just like $75 to do a whole. Woo, that's a whole other story. My wife coming home like, that don't even put the gas in the tank, brother. What you, $75? chicken
and then you
dinners
got to pay musicians, pay singers.
that come with me, and I'm like, what I got, but one thing that I started developing was I was asking God, teach me how to train. And so the Lord, he began to teach me how to pour into singers and worshipers and musicians and different people. So I really do that. I teach them at my house. I'm actually, man, this is just God that I didn't even plan to sit up here. So this is just God, because I just told my church Wednesday, I'm training all of y'all. We're going through training, worship team, intercessors, leaders. I'm restructuring everything in the ministry. And so the Lord told me, he said to train them to get back into the place with God. And the thing is, if it's just like being a pastor, being a senior leader, what we do is, come on, let's be real, our old preachers and stuff, they train them to be like them, well, this is how we do it. No, I tell my church, I don't know what we're doing today. Sometimes I walk in, we're following God. So I'm stretching them, even on the stage. Come on, I need you to sing. Come on, let's flow. Come on, that's it. I'm stretching you. And so what I do is I train them how to hear God. I'm leading them, but what is God saying to you? What is the Lord, what are you hearing in your spirit? And so what I do is behind the scenes, I train them. So even if it's the song of the Lord, okay, you sing it. You waiting on me to sing and then follow. No, you got a song. I'm training you how to hear God. And so when you continue to train them, and see, that's the thing. A lot of times the leaders, it's really up to leaders to train and to develop a culture of worship or the prophetic or whatever, you're trying to see in your church. And so with me, I just really pour into our people. I train them. I give them opportunities to release what God has given to them. And a lot of them are really, they become shocked at what they see and what they hear. So it's like, whoa, that's on the inside of me. Yes, you have it. One particular member said to me, she was singing in rehearsal. I said, you're just afraid. I said, you really have it. So I said, I want you to sing this, release that out of your, and she began to sing it full. I said, you have it. I said, don't worry about me. Don't think about because, oh, pastor, he goes, he does this. No, you become confident. And I begin to speak to her. And I said, you have to release what you have. If you're comfortable with where you are, then that's good. But I want you to be confident in it. The very thing that God has called you to do, what God has called you to release, be confident and comfortable, but yet release it. So it's really all about training. Being a leader must be secure with who God, because the thing is, when you develop, sometimes a person can be more skilled than you, and they're a little more skilled than you, and a leader may not be skilled in that area, and if you're not really secure, you'll feel intimidated. And the thing is, you'll start shutting them down and letting other people sing. I tell my church, I ain't scared of none of y'all. I want you to abuse. I don't know everything. I'm going to soak everything. I'm going to soak it up. I'm going to pull it out because I know that God sent you to help me to build this thing. And so I think that it's really important that leaders understand security, who they are in God, but also train people. It's not for me to control them. So I think that's how different psalmists and different people come. Even like I was telling the worship team today, sometimes people can come in and I didn't feel that from them, but when they see them, like, oh, I was like, look, we don't do it like the CD. We gonna flow today. I didn't even do one song. Like, let's just flow. And then too, you have to be sensitive to the atmosphere, sensitive to God. Because the thing is, we will forever keep doing the same thing. We will never reach our sound if we're not sensitive to God. God is trying to birth something now. And then what he did last night is not what we should repeat. The move, you know what I mean? Sometimes we try to keep the same movement. We try to keep the same flow in conferences and revivals or whatever. And God is saying, behold, I do a new thing. Like, let's just ride the wave. There's another wave that's coming. It's not the same wave, but there's another wave, and let's ride it. So that's really what I do. I train, I pour in, and I develop them to hear God, but I'm secure in it. And a lot of times I'm like, whoa, you got all that? This is what we're dealing with. Man, you can play that. You're skilled like that. And so when I find that out, I'm like, I'm going to use you now because we need to go. And so it's just really all about training and being confident in what God has assigned you to do.
Well, one thing that I want to extract of what he was saying, which was so good, is let's get out of my sound is worship. My sound is praise. My sound is intercession. My sound is CCM. My sound is gossip. Because when we like
You said gossip?
Gospel. Oh, well, for some of us, that's your sound.
I thought you said gossip.
And the reason why I say that is because when we have, and that's why the focus is the sound, not necessarily the sound of deliverance, the sound. Is because when you understand your sound, God can use your sound in whatever way. That's what I learned a few years ago. That's why I'm able to flow the way that I flow or play the way that I play. It's because it's one sound. It's one sound. And when you learn how to harness your sound, and there's another area, because if we go in here, we'll be here all day. Because I'm a firm believer that it's not just about the anointing. It has to be accompanied by skill. Yes. One thing that, and it's a hard subject, but, I when we started our ministry, I set a firm precedence in the beginning. If you're not good at it, please don't make me have to lie to you. If you're not good at it, please don't make me have to lie to you. Is because the Bible says that when God was looking for people all throughout the Old Testament to build the tabernacle, to build the ark, he used skilled craftsmen that were anointed and skilled in that particular area. And so, when you have a sound, God will accompany the skills with it. But what we have to do is be developing the gift. Developing the gift. What was the key word that he said? Train. Which means that we're not waiting on Sunday to come and exercise the gift. But we understand that there has to be times outside of the atmosphere where we're developing the climate. Y'all didn't hear me. That there has to be times outside of the atmosphere where we're being cultivated in the climate. One thing that we say in our ministry is we don't build atmospheres, we build climates. Atmospheres, you have to keep setting and keep setting and keep setting. But when you have a climate of worship in the house, people walk in and they know what to do. They know what to do. My expectation, and I'm still an itinerant minister. Our executive pastor is here. She is not a first lady. If she's a first lady, I'm a first gentleman. If she's a co-pastor, I'm a co-pastor. Me and my wife, we partner hand in hand within the ministry. She has her grace. I have my grace. And when I'm not there, ministry should go on irrelevant of me. If we're together, we'll be there on Sunday. But if we're not there, Pastor Darrell understands that in this moment, you are called to govern the atmosphere, not to do it the way that I would do it, but to be who God has called you to be because the climate has set. Now, for some of you, you're at a disadvantage because he's a senior leader. I'm a senior leader. Apostle Kim is a senior leader. Apostle Maisha is a senior leader. What do you do? And I ain't going to get you in trouble. I promise I'm not going to get you in trouble. Any other senior leaders? Okay. Senior leader, amen. What do you do when the people are more consistent than the senior leader? Because the climate of the house can never, the climate of the gift is the person, whoever's leading, whoever is praying, can never supersede the set person or the foundation of the house. That's why, you can come and be as pure, be as righteous, but if that set person is raggedy, is a whoremonger, they're a thief and a murderer in the spirit, to be quite honest, you're going to be at a disadvantage. You're going to be at a disadvantage. And so when we're talking about the sound, we're talking about the ability to honestly be, first of all, not to be something, just to be. Is to understand, and I love the word he used, authentic in what God has called you to be, and just be. Understanding that it's not about the results necessarily. It's about just being what God has called you to be. One thing that, and I hope I effectively demonstrated that last night. I'm going to preach irregardless of the response. You know, there was a time, and I'm a black preacher. I love church. I love church. But the Lord had to deal with me of, are you going to compromise your sound for the norm? Worship leaders, don't be afraid of the still hush in worship. When you are leading a moment and people can't identify with this. This is not a new revelation, but when I train worship leaders, I talk about the sound of heaven that is also one of the most, I don't have a word. I'm going to use the word fearful. That's not the word I want to use, but it's for some people, it's one of the most fearful things that can ever happen in a service. The Bible talks about in the book of Genesis, when God walked in the cool of the day, that Adam heard the sound of the Lord and he hid. And sometimes as worship leaders, you know that you are in the vein of God when man begins to hide in the presence. Because worship is not designed to meet you. Worship is designed to pull you higher. Praise is to meet you where you are and to rehearse what the Lord has done. But when worship comes in a building, sometimes there has to be a holy hush because no flesh can dwell in his presence. And I'm not saying that to make you feel good about people not responding to your worship. But I'm saying it to release you from the pressure of your sound needs no response. Some of you need to write that down. Your sound does not require a response. When God, if your sound is teaching, if your sound is intercession, it doesn't require a response. What do you do in atmospheres? You know, and we were just together in Charlotte, and this dude can minister, and I feel like some people, they can go in any environment and the environment will just have to cave to it. Now, there are moments where you go into an assignment and God give you a word that the leader don't want to hear. And when the leader don't respond, the people ain't going to respond. So I'm going to assume you've had a few of those moments. But how do you as a, it's easier for us, but I'm still going to ask them anyway. How do you as a senior leader, because we can easily be like, well, I don't got to preach here again. I got my own church. And sometimes we say it out of offense, like, because we want them to receive us. Everybody want to be received. And let's stop lying. Like, you know, as a leader, you want to be received. But how do you handle those moments when they legitimately do not want your sound?
Just go in. No, honestly, in those moments, I think I've had probably in about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I was at a church.
In Indiana?
No.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Mine was Indiana.
Oh, God. I was about to say where at it. But no, it was in Arizona, and I was there, and
Wow.
It was a bunch of older leaders, ministers. But the prophetess came that was over the conference, asked me to come and said, you have a word. And so that's the only reason that I got up to release the word. And so I released the word of the Lord. And of course, some in the house were responding to the word. But my back, I can feel that there was a silence, like a hush from the leaders. And in that moment, it's like I'm prophesying, but my spirit is saying, Lord, what do I do? What do I do? And the Lord said, obey me.
Write that down.
Obey. Obedience is better than sacrifice. And so, but it was a two-way thing here. I could have got lifted up in pride. Wow. My ego could have went there because like, y'all ain't with me. I knew that they wasn't agreeing to this word, and they really got mad because of the house. Some of the people that were their people were agreeing with the word. And after a whole meeting was set up on me by a bishop, an apostle, and a prophet, saying I'm too young to flow in that way. And so the Lord said, if I didn't obey him and release the word, they would have never been convicted.
Wow.
There was a conviction that came over them with the word. And I just released what I'm like, I didn't ask to get up. The host of the conference asked me to get up. And so the moral of the story is to say that even in those moments, obey God. If the opportunity was set for you to release, or there's a position for you to release, remain humble. It's just like David and Saul. David knew what was going on with Saul and how Saul was feeling towards him and all of that. But even in his house, he still acted accordingly.
Come on.
He still honored. And so I honored God, but yet even in my delivery with the prophecy, I wasn't, like making it personal or anything, but it was a word for the region.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the ministers that are there, and I'm at that time kind of new still to the region. So like, who is this cat? Who is he? What does he do? Who saying all of this, and where he come from? I'm feeling all of that, and that was said to me. Yeah. So the Lord said, be obedient. I want you to release what I need you to release. And honestly, even months and a year or so after that, I was reminded through different individuals that was there, said, man of God, that word, oh my God, is unfolding. Things is happening. So you never know who you're touching. So we have to really be sensitive to God and be obedient to God, because the thing is, when we go to glory, whenever that time, we have to give an account on everything that we do. So what, we going to shut down because of religious heads, or because of, tradition and ancient spirits that is in the region trying to control and stop the prophetic? And so we must obey God. And so I would say in those moments, be obedient to God, but watch your spirit, because that's a lot of times we can slip into, because I have the right to say it. You know what I mean? And then now you're operating in a familiar spirit, you're in disobedience, and then you're really you're prophesying at them, and you're not really releasing the weight of the word, or the weight of what God is trying to put on that particular event. So
yeah, that's good.
Obedience.
And I think that's an instruction for all of us, is that, because it's going to happen to everybody. Yeah. It's going to happen to you. I know you think you're the best things in sliced bread, but you're going to have those moments in ministry where you have all intentions of, coming to serve, and they're not going to receive you. Be obedient. Be obedient. I wanted to shift this way for this time. I know we're about to go into lunch, because I feel like if I were to approach it from just preaching and teaching and more of the clinical side, I love theological academia. I love studying the word. I love presenting the word. And I'm a little shady and petty. I love presenting something where you are so convinced this is what the Bible says, and I love to teach it where it just messes you all up. But I didn't want to do that today, because the topic that he gave me was the sound of deliverance, and the underlining undercurrent, the sound. And the purpose of, my heart this morning is to show you the value of your sound. To show you the value of your sound in a setting where we ain't have no musicians. The reason why I sit down, anytime you see me sit down, it's going to get a little dangerous, because I sit down to pace myself. When I'm walking, it's easier for me to get a little bit hype and excited. My blood starts flowing sometimes. But sometimes I sit down to force myself to become subjected, not to my emotions, but to the Holy Spirit of God, and to rely on what he is saying without trying to sway emotions. Because if what God has given me in my sound is authentic, then he's going to do the work. He's going to do the work. So for in these last few minutes, is there any questions or any thoughts that anybody want to voice or ask? Keep in mind, we speak from the marketplace, we speak from the ministry, as well as us having churches, and so some of you may have questions in terms of how do you approach your leaders, where you're in an atmosphere where your sound is not necessarily wanted. They want you to serve, but they don't want your sound. If you have any other parts of the question, don't forget it. There was a season where God would have me on a regiment that I would wake up and I would listen to Noel Jones, what he preached on that Sunday. I don't know who you guys listen to, so I try not to say current names any longer. And here's my philosophy. There's one individual that I listen to almost on a weekly basis, but I don't feel comfortable saying his name publicly because I know how many people he's hurt in ministry. It's the truth. Like I be wishing, because I want to quote him. I'm like, nah, because I might offend more people by just saying his name or her name than saying it. and so there was a season where I was on a heavy regimen, not copying these people, but just getting inspiration and being fed. Because sometimes God will have you in a season where he sends you to a place to serve, but not necessarily to fully eat. Because the church is built on fivefold ministry, and if you're at a church where you only have a pastor, that pastor does not have the apostolic grace to fuel you if you're truly called to the apostolic. That ain't for this session, though. And so there was a transition recently, actually, for me, where God told me, don't listen to anybody. And this is how I know it was confirmed, and I'll let you answer too, where I will turn on people, and your mind ever just wander? Like, they're preaching really good, but for some reason, like, you can't, like, follow what they're saying. Like, you can't, it's not setting. And what I realize is that in that season, I allowed them to pour into you to get you started. But now you have entered, I hear a prophetic word for you. You have now entered the realm of specialty, where you're a specialist, where, at a regular doctor, everybody can go. But your gift is a specialist gift where only a specific pressure will come to get healed. You ain't for everybody. And I realized with me that God has me in a season of specialty where he don't want me contaminated by anything else. Even good stuff can contaminate you. You know what contaminates me? Green vegetables. I don't like it. It's too healthy. It contaminates my diet. You ever wake up early in the morning and eat water, drink water, and it ruins your whole taste buds? No, water nasty before 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, you was in the car. Don't be messing with my flow. Don't mess with my flow. But I'm joking. But like there are certain seasons where God will tell you to shut it down because you probably got distracted or you got off course of what God called you to do. And the hardest part is, what do you do when you're in a season where you can't listen to anybody else, but God is still telling you to press into the revelation that is in the mysteries of the gospel? Yeah, anything you want to say?
I think that was good. I think it was good. My God, I think it was good. Based off what the words you said. But I would just say this as it relates to a worshiper. The Lord told me that, and I'm actually in that season. I was interviewed for something, and then twice. Two people asked me, "Who are you listening to now?" As far as worship artists, and I used to listen. I had to listen to worship artists, Israel, all of the people, because I was putting out songs for our church, and when I was the worship leader, and so. But I'm at a season now. The Lord was saying, "No, I need you to develop your sound." Mm-hmm. He was saying, "I'm preparing you now because the thing is, you're the next. Come on. I'm trying to get you to tap into me, so that when you release your sound, it'll be something that the world will be hungry for." And so I just think that what you have to do, again, it goes to obedience. So getting back to it is just taking that time to pray, to seek him, and then worship him. When you pray, worship him, release that sound. That's what sometimes my wife be like, "I hear you, but babe, come on." but because it just comes out of me. I can be standing, and even it can be an old hymn, an old song, and God will give me something else on that thing. And I'm like, okay, Lord, it's not churchy, it's not religious, but it's something that God gave you. So I just think that, like you said, the specialty, so I think that you just need continue to just ride on that. You got something. That word really stuck out to me when he said specialty, and I felt that for you. So I just think even in this moment, as he said that, and it relates to me, you're in the season, but guard your ears. Really guard your ears, so God can really give you something. And a lot of times we have to be okay as psalmists that, and everybody isn't called to be an artist. You know what I mean? Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Growing up, my desire was like, ooh, singer, Stella Award. I grew up like that. If my stuff get there, okay, all right, I'm good. But as I've matured in God, I'm okay with knowing who my sound is called to.
Yeah.
I'm really okay with that. I'm content. I'm good. But I know that all my life I've been getting all of these words and different things like that. And now it is time for me to release. So I'm being obedient to doing what I need to do to get it out. So I think that would be for you as well. So you're special, but just guard your ears so that, you'll be able to really hear. You'll know it. My sound was really developed, and I'll be done. I was in Texas. Apostle John Eckhart did Reset Texas, and I flew in. Just to go. I wasn't a part of that event, so I flew in to go and went. And what happened was he called. Somebody got my attention and said, he wants you. So I'm like, for what? And he's like, he wants you to go. So I went to the front, and he said, I'm gonna need you to go up there and set the atmosphere. And I was just like, what the heck? And I'm cool, but I'm like, I didn't come to sing. I wasn't prepared. And it was somebody on stage doing worship. And I felt like, this is bogus. Like, don't do this to me. Like, let them flow and you just go and do your thing. How Apostle John is glory. That's how it is. So I'm standing there like, I'm like, oh God. So he said, I'm going to tell you when to go. And I was like on this side, and the guy was up, and it was about another 5 minutes. The guy was just worshiping. He was doing this. He was worshiping, and I was like, God, And so he said, go now. And I kid you not, when I walked up on the platform and took the mic, I felt a weight of glory that I haven't felt in a while. And that was 2018. It was, yes, I was getting ready to release my album, I think. I was working on it. That's when the Lord shifted my sound, and I found it. It was like a glory that came upon me, and the house just went up. It was prophetic songs. I was just flowing prophetically, and hundreds of people were there. And the atmosphere shifted to I almost couldn't stand. It was that powerful. And so I think that I'm sharing it to say, because as he was talking, I really feel that God wants to do something with you. And so I think that you just have to really stay where you are, but be obedient and guard your ears so that when that time comes, you're going to know, oh, this is it. It's on me. And you have to continue to keep cultivating that thing. So, yeah.
Do you feel like you're primarily called to be, do you feel like your main, there are a lot of things that we can do, but all of us have main categories, main thing that God's called you to do. Is your main thing, leading worship? Do you have a history of do you sing background for a lot of people?
I do.
Was that just part of your history?
Yeah.
There comes that point where, because that also is a contributing factor to, contamination is not contamination is something that seeps in. So it's not always a bad thing. But when you are so conditioned to, because they have mandates on their life. And when you're singing background for a whole bunch of people, and he just said, what broke him through was when he got from the background and fully came to the front. That may be, the thing that you have to recognize in the season that you might not can sing background no more. Because what makes a good background singer is your ability to study their sound. Like you're not just listening to their sound, you're studying their sound. And that may be the pivot point for you.
This is exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, I think Benita Jones is like the newest pop out. Like people like, oh, I love Benita Jones. Like she been in this game since before I was born. And what we think is her debut is honestly like her coming out of her prison sentence. Like she's and I've heard one interview where she's talked about it. Like she just didn't know she's been trying to be a solo artist for a long time, but never had it. And so sometimes and honestly, this is why I'm here. And me and him, because I don't know if y'all know this. Prophet Elijah plays piano, and he asked me how did I shift, and yeah, I need you to come lead worship at some point. So don't get inspired by what I'm about to say. Don't get inspired, man. I need you. But he asked me, how did people start kind of booking you for preaching? And I told him I started refusing to take music engagements. And my reasoning was somebody told me if you keep responding to just being a musician, all people will see you as a musician.
Good.
And so Apostle Dana, I lost a lot of money. Because there were people that were like, oh, well, if you're not going to come play, then we're not going to need you. How I ended up in Charlotte, she reached out to me, oh, man of God, can you come play? Apostle, I'm sorry, I'm a full apostle. So I'll come, but I'm not coming to play. I'll play, but I only go preach now. She was like, oh, you can do both. You can do both. We still want you. And sometimes some of you got to stop responding to old names. Like you got to recognize when God upgrades your sound, like you can't respond to anything, and so and this is a transparent moment that I'm saying, like sometimes people all they want is music, and I'm sorry, I'm not in that season no more. I got a family, I'm not leaving my home to come play at your conference. Right. For some people that can't even preach, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. So if I'm coming, I'm gonna come turn over some chairs. I'll play a little bit, but I'm gonna come turn over some tables because that's what I'm called to do. You got it on a little bit. Yeah. I stopped preaching. I sat down. She said, "You're not gonna play?" Oh, I'll play a little bit. Let's go. Right. Let's go. Yeah. Do you feel that's a potential season? I need you to come sing at least once. You gonna preach though? You gonna preach?
Whatever you want. Whatever. I don't need it. Do I need it? We recording? We good? If not, we good. Yes, I will be honest with you. I'm in that season. That's why I keep laughing, because I'm in that season now as even a worshiper. I do go to do worship. I still accept people. I won't ever stop being a worshiper. But I know that God told me, he said, I'm highlighting the sound of your voice as a prophet, as a pastor. And now I've accepted, I always knew that, but the apostolic grace that's on my life. I'm like, I don't need the title. I just want the signs, and so I just, my wife actually told me, I was, how we don't want to sometimes hear our wives.
Why don't you walk out the room?
But she told me, she said, babe, you keep accepting engagements to do worship. She said, you a whole pastor. No. She said, not just a pastor, you a whole apostle. No. She said, you flow apostolically. This is what we see. They don't see that. She said, you. Okay, y'all are in my question. Can I interrupt you? Go ahead. Literally, like y'all are in my question. Go ahead. How did you transition with that? So that's really where I am. I was recently elevated to be an associate pastor of my church, but I was the praise and worship leader. Wow. And then I was the praise and worship pastor. Oh, wow. But I still want to sing, and I've had to step back from that and for me, I would say in that transition from worship leader to pastor, honestly, we've been pastoring, our church is 8 years in Arizona. And so I didn't have a worship leader. So I had to be the worship leader and preach until the Lord sent. And then actually my wife's aunt is a psalmist as well. So she would sometimes sing, but I had to shift in my mind to know that God was calling me higher. I had to accept that. And so when the moment that I accept that I'm shifting, that's when there was another weight of anointing on me, even for the next level. Because even with me pastoring, I was pastoring for at least 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And it didn't really hit me as a pastor until like the 5th year. Because I was still operating as, I'm the psalmist, worship leader. I could sing and preach. But there was another pastoral grace that came on me when I shifted.
Come on.
Now we're in the 8th year, and the Lord told me a year ago, right before COVID, right before I did my conference a few weeks, and each year, COVID, we had to cancel. And the Lord, I heard him clear. He said, "It's time to build." So I was like, "Okay, all right, Lord, you talk about build a building?" And he said, "No, it's time to build the people." And he said, "I'm shifting you apostolically. A lot of people are not going to like the way you come, shifting and not going to agree with it." So the Lord told me, he said, "I want you to even study more." I grew up in it, but it's a difference when now God is calling you to it. Right. And so I had to become one. And it was when my wife said to me, she said, "You keep accepting these engagements and going to these churches and they want you to worship." She said, "There's more to you." I just accepted, it was kind of trickery. I ain't gonna say that now. I ain't gonna say it's trickery, but the year before, the woman of God said, "I gotta get you in to come and minister, to preach. I'm gonna get you next year to preach." So I said, "Oh, okay." And she's real dear to me. I said, "Okay, well, whatever you," I said, "just let me know. For you, I'll come." So they reached out to me. It's gonna be, but they reached out to me, and so I said, "Okay." I said, "Yeah, for her, whatever she need me to do, whatever, I'll come." It didn't dawn on me. I didn't know what I was doing until the flyer came out.
Yeah.
So there was a flyer.
Yep.
With all of the preachers. So my wife said, "Oh, you see this flyer? Where you at?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I don't care." So then it was another flyer came out. I was on there with the psalmist. So I said, "Oh, okay." I thought I was. So my spirit a little bit kind of like,
Yep.
So I said, "Okay, whatever she wants." But the Lord's, I told her, my wife, we started talking about it. She said, "Babe, that's exactly what I'm talking about." Because the thing is, people will try to keep you where they're comfortable with you at. So the Lord, like you said, sometimes you have to say, "That's not what I'm doing. I'll come, but hey, if you, whatever, go, man of God." Yeah. Wow. Wow. Woo. Yep, familiarity.
So one thing I want to reconcile, and here I go. This falls into areas of, because I'm a clinical teacher, and so I'm not teaching culture to a house. Like, I feel like I'm called to change the entire culture of how we do church, period. And so one thing that I want you to reconcile, now, I want clarity though. Do you feel that God is emerging you apostolically, or God is emerging you to establish as a pastor?
I do. I feel like it's apostolic.
Are you under an apostle?
He has the anointing, but he is like, I don't really want that because he feels like everybody is.
And so let me say that that's one of the most dangerous things that he can do for himself, is because if you're like you fighting because we don't go into supermarkets and argue about things being titled, because some of y'all get ratchet that if they label the thing wrong, it says it's 30 calories, but it's really 1,000 calories. Y'all have a whole fit suing everybody. But we go to church and be like, titles are not important. No, titles are important because it sets expectations. And when you fight the title, you're actually fighting the wineskin. And so I don't want to go too deep because I don't want to disrespect nobody. But one thing that I want you to reconcile is there's no such thing as a worship pastor. You're a pastor who may be in the season in the vein of worship. Like God, when God is establishing fivefold ministry, he's not saying, well, you're only a pastor to youth, but to adults you're not a pastor. No, you're a pastor, or you're an apostle, or you're a prophet, and your focal point may be this, but you never know if God shift you. And that was, I messed up a whole lot of people by trying to be a youth pastor. Then I went to be a young adult pastor, and because I was that person that, I'm having youth revivals, and if you ain't praying, you ain't saved. Because I didn't care about your soul necessarily, like just being here. Because, pastors be like, oh, we thank you for just being here. No, Negro, you better be at the altar crying out for the Lord. Come on, let's hold on to the altar, because that was that apostolic in the infancy stages, pioneering, trying to fit into the vantage point of a pastor. But I will say that your dilemma, because they're under our covering, and what their problem, I guarantee you, is exactly your problem. And we were just talking about, I forget who I was talking to. I just said this yesterday, that Moses, it was Moses' responsibility to bring Joshua before the people and anoint Joshua before the people, because it's not Joshua's job to prove who he is in the spirit. It's not on Joshua to defend his name and defend what God is calling him to. And my testimony is I had to fight a lot of battles that were really not my battles. And I had to allow the fruit to defend what I could not verbally defend, because I didn't have an answer. And I was ordained. I didn't ask for this. I got ordained as a prophet, walked in late to church one day, and he just was ordaining people. And I got affirmed. Like, that was my consecration into where I am today. And so I think for you, the answer is proper identification, proper labeling, and proper revelation of who you really are. It's convenient because even though we have all of these apostolic terminology, we're still functioning pastorally. And because we don't want no conflict with the senior pastor, we'll put other labels on it: worship pastor, youth pastor, this, but why can't there be multiple pastors in the church? And I'm about to trick you. I'm about to make you go crazy. I'm not the senior pastor of our house. He's the senior pastor of the house. How can I be the senior pastor if I'm an apostle? So we are the senior apostles, me and my wife, but Pastor Darrell is the senior pastor of our house. And so it's a first among equals. We have other pastors. He's not the only pastor, but he's the first among equals. And there's a book I recommend. It's an old school book, Apostolic Strategies Impacting the Nation. The book costs $167 on Amazon, and the author is a guy from Singapore called Jonathan David. And this is old school. Apostle Eckhart don't really talk about it no more, but this was the manual for apostolic ministry back like 10, 15 years ago, and I recommend it for any builder, any senior leader, apostolic strategies, and impacting or affecting the nation, because it confronts the pastoral mindset of, if you're the pastor, nobody else can be pastors. Right. Like, and it's funny that we have problems with people calling themselves apostles in church, but yet you call yourself, associate pastor. What's an associate pastor? You call yourself minister. Like we make up terms administratively to make it make sense in organizational structure, but we don't value biblical structure, that if God called you an apostle, just you're an apostle. If God called you a prophet, because it's not a luxury, it's actually a death sentence. It's a death sentence, and so I would definitely. I forget who it is. There's somebody in our circle that I always have these conversations with. I'm tired. It took for me. She has her hand up, and then it's lunchtime. Or we will knock out these things in less than 3 minutes. It took for me to be put out of the ministry, because what I would encourage you to do is to not change the potency of your grace. It took for me. Literally, what was told to me back in 2015, I don't like that people are listening to you more than they're listening to me. And you got to go. And it took for me to accept that if you can't shift, I have to break the wineskin. The Bible says that I can't pour new wine into old wineskin. And the reason why he does it is to preserve both the wine and the wineskin. And sometimes what you have to do is sit there, be obedient, and break the wineskin, because they refuse to be transformed. It's uncomfortable. And honestly, I was one of those musicians where everybody liked, because they needed me. I had no scandals to my name. Everybody loved me. I could walk into any church, be escorted to the front row. And I feel like my name was stolen in that season. That I ain't do nothing wrong, but just do what you asked. You asked me to be the young adult pastor. You asked me to be the youth pastor. And I was obedient to what you asked me to, and then you got upset that they listened to me more than listening to you. Like, that's your problem. That's your problem. And what I realized, and I teach this, Moses wasn't sold out, he was sold up. He was not sold out, he was sold up. And sometimes God will use rejection to sell you up into something that can fully understand and comprehend what you are called to. And so so the hard part is, you can't rebel, don't let your character change. But what you might need to do is press more into your assignment and allow them to get uncomfortable enough where they have to decide, am I going to categorize you correctly, or am I going to release you prematurely? And sometimes he is the person called to usher you in, but it's Saul's choice. You either going to dust the seat and usher in the next, or you're going to throw the daggers. And David handled it so well that I'm going to allow you throw the daggers and not talk about you, because you're still anointed and you're still called. And I realize your problem with me is your problem, not mine. And to answer your question, we don't have the time. To answer your question, apostolic ministry is more about systems and structures than the people. That's why apostolic people need to work with pastoral people. Pastoral people work with the people, where apostles work with the systems, the blueprints, and the architectures of the ministry. And so in every season, you should always be training your replacement. How do you get out of just being the worship leader? Train your replacements. Where you can't do it because you don't have to do it because you raised up so many other people where they don't know where to put you. Yep. And don't do what I did. Now, this is where I messed up in my last season. I went on sabbatical and I forced them. I forced their hand. It didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, but I forced them to do what was the inevitable. I went on sabbatical. I just stopped showing up. And I literally, that's what you did. We'll talk after service. Real quick, what's your question? Here's a prophetic word. You would not be asking this question if you didn't already know the answer. So what you want me to do is make it make sense. One of my friends, Pastor Pierre Johnson, he has a phrase that he says, at the point of revelation, prophecy is fulfilled. At the point of revelation, prophecy is fulfilled. And so you need it to make sense, but why do you need it to make sense? Y'all friends? And how many confirmations have you already had? Because if I were to give you a prophetic word, lay hands, lay you out, then you would be missing the treasure of your obedience. God does, and we have a culture where 3 people got to tell you for it to make sense. When God is like, "What are they your God? Why is not my word enough for you?" Now, and this is where I am, and I ain't trying to be everybody's spiritual father, but I believe that the story of the prodigal son was more about the father than the son. And what I believe that the true essence of that story is that everybody has the right to leave. And if you are truly a spiritual father, the door should always be open. And so what I'm saying to you is, I know what everybody in the current culture is saying, but you have the right to leave and to hear God. And if you're wrong, you have the right to be wrong. And so step out on faith, walk on the water. If you sink, look back to Jesus. If you realize you're walking on water, you're going to, I don't mean this, no offense, but you're going to realize how retarded you were being stuck, asking God the same thing over and over, being Gideon, when God already told you what he was going to do. Gideon could have saw the deliverance days earlier if he stopped asking God about something he already said. Gideon, well, God, if there's dew on the ground, then I'll know. If there's no dew on the ground, then I know. Gideon, you could have already had your breakthrough if you would have believed me the first time. The first time. Amen. I don't want to be that ninja. So we go park here, but you know I'm gonna put a demand on his grace. So we'll be here because I'm big on relationships. So a lot of my gift operates outside of church, outside of the pulpit. So we'll be around to answer any questions, dialogue, and the talk because it's lunchtime, and I know Psalmist Rain will be here at 1:00 to do her session. Amen. Amen. Come on, let's give God praise for Apostle Denard Street. Amen.